The stubborn alien queen expected the human soldier to kneel. She was in for a surprise. From orbit, Zithra looked like a jewel in the dark void of space, its cities gleaming like rivers of light that twisted around mountains and valleys. The air shimmered with energy that pulsed from the planet's core, giving the surface an almost alive glow. It was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. The Zithurians were known across the galaxy as proud and unyielding rulers, and Alara knew she had to be careful. The command ship, sleek and silver, descended through the thick violet atmosphere. Alara felt the hum of the engines vibrate through her boots. Every movement of the ship seemed exaggerated in the planet's heavy gravity, making her feel as though she were wading through invisible water. She glanced at her crew, who were preparing for landing with precision. Each member was tense. The stakes were high. One wrong move could turn a peaceful negotiation into a declaration of war. "Captain, the landing zone is clear," said Lieutenant Harris, his voice steady but his eyes betraying nervousness. "All systems green," Alara nodded. "Good." "Let's make history," she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. She had faced danger before, countless times, but nothing compared to stepping onto the homeworld of an alien queen who expected total obedience from anyone who entered her realm. The ship's landing ramp lowered, revealing a bustling courtyard filled with Zithurian guards and attendants. They were tall, their limbs long and graceful, their skin reflecting the light of the twin suns. Their eyes were large, almond-shaped, glowing faintly in the twilight of the planet's evening. Each step they took was precise, synchronized almost like a dance. Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. These were beings of unmatched discipline. She stepped off the ramp, her boots echoing against the smooth stone floor. The air smelled different here, metallic and electric, carrying a faint hum that seemed to resonate with the Zithurian city itself. Her hand rested on the hilt of her sidearm, not because she expected immediate danger, but because she always stayed ready. It was a habit, one that had saved her life more times than she could count. A group of Zithurian officials approached, their ceremonial robes flowing like liquid silk behind them. They were tall, even by Zithurian standards, and their eyes were sharp, observing every detail of the human soldier before them. One of them, clearly the lead, spoke in a voice that resonated in the courtyard, amplified by some unseen technology. "Captain Alara Vance," the official said, his tone formal. "You are summoned to the presence of Queen Lysara. She will decide your fate and the fate of your people." Alara nodded, her expression calm. "I understand," she replied. Her voice carried a confidence she didn't entirely feel. Inside, her heart raced, but she forced herself to walk with steady, deliberate steps. Every movement mattered here. Every gesture could be interpreted as respect or insult. The procession moved toward the heart of the city, where the palace towered above everything else. The structure was like nothing Alara had ever seen. Its walls were made of crystalline material that reflected the sun's light in dazzling patterns, shifting colors with every angle. The palace seemed alive, as if it were breathing. The streets leading to it were lined with Zithurian citizens, who watched silently, their glowing eyes fixed on the human soldier. Alara felt the weight of their gaze, heavy and unyielding, but she did not falter. Finally, they reached the grand gates. Two massive doors, each carved with symbols that seemed to move when viewed from the corner of the eye, stood between Alara and the queen. The doors opened slowly, revealing the throne room. The room was vast, larger than any hall on Earth, its ceilings lost in shadows above. Crystal chandeliers floated without chains, casting prismatic light across the room. The walls were adorned with intricate murals that depicted Zithurian history, wars, alliances, and triumphs over countless worlds. Every surface pulsed faintly with energy, a constant reminder of the queen's power. And there, at the center of it all, was Queen Lysara. She sat upon a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself, an organic structure of crystal and metal entwined. Her armor shimmered in shades of blue and silver, perfectly matching the light of the room. Her eyes were piercing, almost unnerving, reflecting the energy of her subjects' unwavering loyalty. Every movement she made was precise and deliberate, each gesture carrying authority that demanded obedience. "Captain Vance," Queen Lysara's voice echoed through the room, soft yet commanding, carrying a weight that made Alara instinctively straighten her posture. "You have entered my world, you have crossed the stars, now show me your respect, kneel." The silence that followed was deafening, Every Zithurian in the room watched, waiting for the human to comply. Alara felt a flicker of tension, but she did not kneel, she did not bow. She simply stood, her feet planted firmly, her back straight, and her eyes locked on the queen. "I will not kneel," Alara said, her voice steady. "Not because I do not respect you, but because I do not bow to anyone. I stand for my people, my values, and what I believe is right." A murmur spread through the court, a ripple of surprise and disbelief. Queen Lysara's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. She had expected submission, expected fear, expected compliance. Instead, she found defiance. "You are bold, human," the queen said, her voice calm but sharp. "Boldness can be admirable or foolish. We shall see which it is." Alara's hands were steady at her sides, but her mind raced. She had expected hostility, perhaps even attack, but not outright dismissal of her authority. She had come to negotiate peace, not to provoke war. Yet she realized sometimes standing firm was the only way to earn respect. The queen waved her hand, and a platform rose from the floor, lifting Alara and the surrounding officials closer to the throne. The room felt smaller suddenly, more intense. Every detail was sharper, from the faint hum of energy in the crystals to the glint of light off the queen's armor. "Tell me, human," Lysara continued, "why should I allow your kind a place in this galaxy? You are untested, fragile, and so small in comparison to the Zithurians." Alara's gaze did not waver. "We may be small, but we endure, we adapt, and we fight for what is right, not just for power or pride. That is why you should not underestimate us." The queen studied her for a long moment, the silence stretching until it felt like it would break the room. Then, without warning, she rose from her throne, moving with a grace and speed that was almost otherworldly. The Zithurian guards shifted slightly, as if sensing potential danger. Yet Alara did not step back. She had faced danger before and knew how to hold her ground. Lysara stopped a few meters away, close enough for Alara to see the subtle patterns of energy that ran beneath her armor. "You will be tested," she said finally. "Every skill, every instinct, every ounce of courage you possess will be pushed to the limit. Succeed and you may earn respect, perhaps even alliance. Fail and your people will be remembered only as cautionary tales." Alara nodded. "I accept," she said. There was no hesitation, no fear in her voice that could be sensed, only determination. The queen turned, and with a flick of her hand, the doors of the throne room opened, revealing a long corridor lined with portals to the trial arenas. The murmurs of the court followed Alara as she stepped forward, each step echoing in the cavernous hall. She knew the path ahead would be difficult, perhaps impossible by Zithurian standards, but she also knew something her alien hosts might not fully understand. Humans thrived under challenge, and nothing inspired courage like the fight for survival and respect. The platform lowered, carrying Alara toward the first arena. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders, the expectations of both her own species and the alien queen. She knew one thing for certain: she would not kneel and she would not back down. In a galaxy where power often demanded submission, the human soldier's defiance was itself a spark that could ignite change. And so, Captain Alara Vance took her first steps into the heart of Zithra, unaware of the tests, the danger, and the allies she would find along the way. The throne had expected obedience, but it would get something entirely different. The air in the arena was electric, charged with a strange energy that made Alara's skin tingle. She had been led through the long corridor from the throne room to a vast chamber, larger than anything she had ever seen. The ceiling stretched so high that it was lost in shadow, and the walls glimmered with embedded crystals that cast refracted light across the arena floor. Every surface vibrated faintly, as if alive, resonating with the pulse of the planet itself. Standing in the center was a structure that resembled a maze, made from shifting walls of energy. Queen Lysara's voice echoed through the chamber, calm but commanding. "Your first trial begins now, human. Navigate the labyrinth of minds. Use only your intelligence and instincts. Fail, and the consequences will be severe." Alara studied the maze. The walls shimmered and shifted, creating pathways that appeared and disappeared without warning. She realized this was not just a test of knowledge, but of perception, adaptability, and patience. Humans had always relied on ingenuity and observation to survive, and she would need every ounce of that to succeed. She stepped forward, her boots silent against the smooth floor. As soon as she crossed the entrance, the walls began to move. The light patterns shifted, forming false paths that could easily mislead anyone who rushed or panicked. Alara took a slow breath, forcing herself to focus. She had learned early in life that hesitation was dangerous, but blind haste could be fatal. The first challenge came quickly. A section of the floor sank beneath her feet, revealing a glowing pit of swirling energy. Alara paused, calculating distances, testing how far she could jump. She took a running start, leapt with precision, and landed safely on the other side. The walls shifted again, now forming a corridor that narrowed to barely a meter in width. She crouched and slid through, her body moving as naturally as it had in countless simulations on Earth. Time seemed to lose meaning as she moved through the labyrinth. Every turn brought a new obstacle. Walls that seemed solid but disappeared when touched, sections of the floor that rearranged themselves, and puzzles etched into the walls that demanded logic and creativity. Each challenge tested a different aspect of human capability. At one point, she reached a section filled with holographic images. Dozens of projections flickered before her, each depicting a possible path forward. Only one was real, the rest would lead to traps. Alara studied them carefully, noticing subtle differences in the way the light reflected off the real path. She smiled slightly, realizing the aliens had not accounted for the human eye's ability to detect tiny inconsistencies. She chose her path and moved forward. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, she could not tell. The labyrinth seemed endless, designed to exhaust both body and mind. Sweat ran down her back and her muscles ached, but Alara pressed on. She remembered her mission, the responsibility she carried, and the example she had to set for her people. Giving up was not an option. Finally, she reached a chamber with a single pedestal at its center. On it lay a small, crystalline orb that pulsed with light. A voice, unmistakably Lysara's, echoed in her mind. "Solve the puzzle of the orb, human. Only then will you be allowed to leave this trial." Alara approached the orb cautiously. The surface was smooth, but as she touched it, intricate patterns of light began to swirl within. Symbols she had never seen before formed and dissolved, changing faster than the eye could follow. She studied them, her mind racing. These were not just symbols, they were a language of logic, a combination of shapes, sequences, and energy flows. She traced the patterns with her fingers, experimenting with combinations. She tried intuitive solutions, guided guesses, and even trial and error, but the orb resisted. Then she paused, stepping back, and allowed herself a moment of calm. She remembered the lessons from her training. Sometimes the solution required patience, observation, and understanding rather than force. Alara observed the orb carefully. She noticed that certain patterns only appeared when she mirrored her movements with her hands. Slowly, methodically, she adjusted her gestures, matching the flow of energy within the orb. The symbols began to align, forming sequences that resonated in harmony. Light cascaded from the orb, filling the chamber in brilliant waves. With a final motion, the orb stabilized and glowed steadily, signaling her success. A section of the labyrinth walls receded, opening a path forward. Alara exhaled, feeling a rush of triumph and relief. She had passed the first trial, proving her intellect and adaptability. But she knew this was only the beginning. The Zithurians would not test her lightly, and she suspected the challenges ahead would be even more demanding. As she moved toward the next arena, the air shifted. The temperature dropped slightly, and a faint hum of energy filled the chamber. The next trial was not just mental, it would test her strength and endurance. She entered a circular arena, its floor composed of smooth, dark stone. In the center stood a towering figure, clearly a Zithurian combat sentinel, its armor gleaming and body built for both speed and power. Lysara's voice again echoed, this time from multiple directions. Trial of strength. Defeat the sentinel human using skill, not brute force. Remember, victory is not always about power. Alara analyzed the sentinel. It moved with precision, its attacks swift and calculated. She could not match it in raw strength, but humans had always thrived by observing, predicting, and exploiting weaknesses. She circled cautiously, studying its movements. Each strike it made followed a rhythm, almost predictable if she stayed patient. She waited for the right moment, then used a combination of agility and clever tactics. She dodged, countered, and redirected the sentinel's energy against it. With each calculated move, she forced it closer to the edge of the arena. Finally, with a swift maneuver, she triggered a mechanism in the floor that ensnared the sentinel, immobilizing it. The trial was complete. Breathing heavily, Alara allowed herself a brief moment to rest. Her body ached, her muscles burned, but her determination was stronger than exhaustion. She understood now that the Queen's tests were designed not only to challenge physical and mental skill, but also to measure character, the resilience, courage, and ingenuity that defined a human. The final trial was yet to come, a challenge of strategy and diplomacy. Alara was led to a chamber where holographic projections of different worlds and civilizations appeared. Lysara's voice instructed her to negotiate alliances, prevent conflicts, and make decisions that would affect the fate of entire species. Alara stepped forward, studying the projections. This was unfamiliar territory. Her training as a soldier had prepared her for combat, but this was a test of judgment and foresight. She considered each civilization, analyzing their strengths, weaknesses, and motivations. She crafted solutions that balanced fairness with practicality, ensuring that no world was unfairly exploited. Hours passed as she made decisions, each one followed by immediate feedback from the simulations. Mistakes were corrected, successes rewarded, and every choice was scrutinized by the Queen's system. Alara felt the pressure, but she embraced it. Humans thrived under pressure. The ability to think clearly, adapt quickly, and act decisively had carried her species across stars and battles alike. Finally, the simulations concluded. Lysara's voice rang out, calm but firm. "You have completed the trials, Captain Vance. You have shown intelligence, skill, courage, and leadership. Few have ever succeeded. Few have ever earned even a fraction of what you have." Alara exhaled, her body trembling slightly from exhaustion, but her mind was sharp. She had survived tests designed by a species that valued perfection above all else. She had faced challenges that would have broken many, yet she stood unbowed, her spirit intact. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice steady despite her fatigue. "I only did what I had to do for my people and for myself." A silence followed, not of tension, but of acknowledgement. The Queen's presence seemed to fill the room, her gaze weighing but not threatening. Lysara's voice finally spoke, carrying a note of respect. "You are unlike any human we have encountered. Perhaps there is more to your kind than I believed. Perhaps we have much to learn from each other." Alara allowed herself a small smile. For the first time, she sensed a shift in the Queen's demeanor, a recognition that respect is earned through courage, intellect, and perseverance, not mere submission. The doors of the arena opened, leading back toward the palace. Alara walked forward, her steps steady, aware that more challenges awaited, but confident in her own abilities. She had proven that a human could face the impossible and survive. More importantly, she had proven that she would never kneel to fear or intimidation, no matter the odds. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the crystalline city in shades of purple and gold. Alara looked up at the palace spires, shining like beacons in the twilight. She knew that the path ahead would be filled with trials even greater than the ones she had faced. But for the first time, she felt that perhaps the Queen herself might become an unexpected ally, rather than a relentless adversary. And so, with her head held high, Captain Alara Vance stepped forward into the heart of Zithra, ready for whatever awaited her next. The labyrinth of minds, the trial of strength, and the tests of strategy had only strengthened her resolve. The Queen expected submission, but instead she would see determination, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. The doors of the throne room closed behind Captain Alara Vance with a soft, humming resonance. The chamber she entered now was vast, stretching far beyond what her eyes could take in. The ceiling was lost in shadows above, and the walls shimmered with embedded crystals that caught the twin sun's light, scattering it in sparkling patterns across the polished floor. This was the first trial, though she did not yet know the full challenge that awaited her. From the shadows, a voice rang out, clear, controlled, commanding. It was Queen Lysara. "Captain Alara Vance," the voice echoed across the chamber. "You have stood before me without bowing. You have shown courage, but courage alone is not enough. To earn respect here, you must prove your mind, your body, and your judgment. Only then will your place in this galaxy be considered." The floor beneath Alara rumbled faintly, and panels of the arena shifted, forming a labyrinth of glowing walls. Each panel glimmered like liquid crystal, reshaping itself constantly. "Your first trial," Lysara continued, "is the labyrinth of minds. Navigate it. Solve its challenges. Only those who see beyond appearances succeed. Fail, and your people will remember you as one who underestimated Zithara. Alara's heart pounded, but she steadied her breathing. She had faced impossible situations before, though nothing like this. She knew she had to rely on observation, patience, and reason. Strength alone would not save her here. She stepped forward, her boots silent against the smooth stone floor. The labyrinth walls shifted immediately, forming twisting paths and dead ends. She paused, taking a moment to study the patterns. Something about the shifting crystals felt alive, almost like the maze was watching her. Her first challenge arrived quickly. A section of floor sank beneath her feet, revealing a pit filled with swirling energy. The walls of the pit glowed with pulsating light that made the air hum. Alara measured the distance, calculating the angle of her jump. She ran forward, leapt, and landed firmly on the other side. The labyrinth shifted again, narrowing into a corridor that forced her to crawl beneath moving panels. She realized that the labyrinth was testing more than intelligence. It tested patience, control, and adaptability. Every wrong step would cost time, energy, or worse. The human's ability to adapt, she reminded herself, had been the key to survival on countless worlds. She would rely on that now. Hours seemed to pass as she navigated the labyrinth. Sections of the floor changed under her weight. Walls shimmered with complex symbols that demanded careful thought. Some walls projected illusions, creating paths that vanished the moment she touched them. Other sections required her to solve visual and logical puzzles, decoding patterns in the swirling lights of the crystal panels. At one point, Alara found herself before a glowing pedestal with a crystalline sphere floating above it. The sphere pulsed with radiant energy. Symbols unlike any she had seen before spun inside it in intricate, fast-moving patterns. Lysara's voice echoed in her mind. "Solve the puzzle, human. Align the sequences. Only then will you find the path forward." Alara studied the sphere carefully. At first, it seemed impossible, chaotic. But then she noticed patterns, subtle repetitions, small cues hidden in the flashes of light. Her hands moved over the sphere with precision, adjusting angles and tracing the flowing energy. Slowly, the patterns began to align, forming a harmonious sequence. A wave of light radiated outward from the orb, signaling success. The labyrinth walls shimmered and parted, opening a path forward. Alara took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling. She had completed the first trial. Her mind had passed the test, but the chamber ahead promised more than puzzles. It was designed to test her strength. She entered a circular arena. In its center stood a massive Zithurian combat sentinel. Its armor reflected the surrounding lights, and its eyes glowed a sharp blue. The sentinel moved smoothly, each step measured as if it were already aware of her approach. Lysara's voice sounded again. "Trial of strength. Do not rely on brute force alone. Defeat the sentinel, human, using skill, patience, and strategy. Show that intelligence and courage can rival raw power." Alara analyzed the sentinel. Its attacks would be fast, precise, and deadly. She could not match its strength directly. Instead, she needed to anticipate its movements, exploit openings, and remain calm under pressure. Humans had survived countless battles using adaptability and quick thinking. She would rely on that. The sentinel struck first, a swift swipe that would have thrown a less trained opponent to the ground. Alara ducked and rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike. She observed the pattern of its movements, noting the timing and repetition. She began to counter its attacks, using momentum to evade and redirect its energy against itself. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed in a blur of motion. Each maneuver required complete focus. Her muscles burned, sweat stung her eyes, but she did not falter. Finally, she lured the sentinel toward the edge of the arena, where a hidden trap mechanism engaged, immobilizing the machine. The sentinel was defeated, not through force, but through human ingenuity. Exhausted but resolute, Alara moved to the next challenge. This time, it was not physical or mental alone, but a test of judgment and diplomacy. The arena shifted again, transforming into a holographic simulation chamber. Multiple alien civilizations appeared as projections, each representing unique strengths, needs, and ambitions. Lysara's voice instructed, negotiate alliances, prevent conflicts, make decisions that balance the needs of multiple worlds. One mistake could cost thousands of lives. Show that you can lead wisely. Alara studied the holograms. Some civilizations were aggressive, others fragile. Some had long histories of mistrust. She thought carefully, balancing fairness with practicality. Every choice mattered. A misstep could destroy fragile alliances or embolden aggressors. Using logic, empathy, and careful observation, Alara guided negotiations. She mediated disputes, proposed compromises, and anticipated potential betrayals. She adapted her strategies in real time, learning from feedback in the simulation. Slowly, the conflicts resolved and the holographic worlds aligned in balance. She had succeeded. Finally, the chamber shifted back to its original form. Lysara's voice echoed, a mixture of authority and something softer, perhaps respect. You have passed the trials, Captain Vance. Intelligence, strength, courage, and judgment, you have shown all these in abundance. Few have done what you have done. Alara exhaled deeply. Her body ached, her mind buzzed with exhaustion, but she felt a deep satisfaction. She had endured tests designed to break the strongest of beings and had emerged unbowed. For the first time, she saw Lysara's expression change subtly. The queen, so often rigid and unyielding, regarded her with a hint of curiosity and respect. It was clear that Alara's performance had made an impression, a small crack in the wall of absolute pride the Zithurians were known for. "You are unlike any human I have encountered," Lysara said. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I believed. Perhaps there is value in learning from one another." Alara allowed herself a small, weary smile. "That is why I am here," she replied, "to show that humanity has strength, courage, and the will to stand for what is right. Not through dominance, but through respect, determination, and action." The doors of the arena opened, leading back toward the palace halls. Alara walked forward, her steps deliberate, her mind sharp despite the physical fatigue. She had faced mental, physical, and diplomatic challenges, proving that humans could survive, even thrive, where others might fail. Outside, the city glittered under the light of the twin suns. Crystalline towers rose like mountains of glass, and the streets below were filled with quiet observers, watching the trials unfold. Alara knew that the eyes of Zithra were upon her, but she also knew that she had earned a measure of respect, not through fear, but through courage, skill, and unwavering determination. And yet, even as she moved forward, she understood that the most difficult challenges were still ahead. The Queen's tests had shown her abilities, but they had also revealed the complexity of the Zithurian world. Political tensions, ancient customs, and the weight of expectation would demand more than skill or strength. They would demand strategy, insight, and the unbreakable human spirit. Captain Alara Vance had proven herself in the first trials. She had demonstrated the power of adaptability, intelligence, courage, and leadership. She had shown that humanity could face the impossible without kneeling. And now she was ready for whatever awaited her next. Captain Alara Vance walked through the glowing corridors of the palace, her boots echoing softly against the crystal floors. The arena trials had tested her mind, body, and judgment. Yet as she approached the heart of Zithra, she felt a new weight settle on her shoulders. The challenges of survival were over, but the challenge of understanding Queen Lysara, the queen who ruled this proud alien civilization, was only beginning. The hallway widened into a grand chamber filled with bioluminescent plants. Their soft glow illuminated a bridge that led to a terrace overlooking the city. Queen Lysara waited there, her armor glinting faintly in the twilight. She moved with the grace of someone completely at ease in her power, yet her eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity. "Alara Vance," Lysara said, her voice calm but sharp, "you have passed my trials. Few beings have shown the intellect and resilience necessary to navigate the labyrinth of minds, defeat the sentinel of strength, and balance the simulations of strategy. And yet I am not fully convinced of your purpose here. Why do you stand so firmly against submission? What drives your defiance?" Alara stepped forward, her posture steady. She met the queen's gaze without flinching. "I do not kneel because respect cannot be demanded. Respect must be earned. My defiance is not against you personally, but against the idea that anyone, human or alien, should bow blindly to power. Courage, honor, and intelligence are worth more than blind obedience." Lysara's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. The queen, used to unquestioned loyalty and deference, had rarely encountered a being who refused to yield without fear or anger. She was intrigued, yet not entirely trusting. "You speak of courage and honor," Lysara said, her voice measured. Yet the galaxy is cruel, strength is necessary, obedience is necessary. Without it, civilizations fall to chaos and ruin. Your ideals may be noble, but are they practical? Can humanity survive if it refuses to bend? Alara shook her head slowly. Humans survive because we adapt, we think, and we care about what we stand for. We don't always follow rules blindly, but we endure because we use our minds, our courage, and our hearts. Strength alone is not enough to survive. It is purpose and perseverance that truly matter. The queen regarded her in silence, her gaze sharp and calculating. She had faced countless ambassadors, generals, and rulers, yet Alara's words held a clarity that few could match. Lysara decided it was time for a direct test of ideals. Very well, the queen said finally. If your beliefs are so strong, then you shall see whether they can withstand the reality of this galaxy. She raised her hand, and holographic images appeared around them. Worlds in conflict, disputes between species, and potential crises flickered in midair. These are the dilemmas your kind faces. Each decision has consequences. Choose wrongly and countless lives may suffer. How would you act in the face of impossible choices? Alara studied the projections carefully. The images depicted alien societies under stress, some facing internal rebellions, others on the brink of war with neighboring planets. The solutions were not simple. Diplomacy, resource allocation, and negotiation were entangled with culture, history, and survival. Her mind worked quickly. She began proposing solutions that balanced fairness and practicality, understanding that compromise often required sacrifice. She prioritized lives over power, reason over pride. For each decision, she explained her reasoning aloud, her voice clear and calm. Lysara watched, noting how Alara's decisions were shaped not by fear, but by careful consideration and empathy. For a species accustomed to hierarchy and absolute obedience, the human approach was unusual, even revolutionary. You would risk everything for ideals, Lysara said softly. Yet sometimes ideals lead to failure. Your species must have suffered for this. Alara nodded. We have, but failure teaches us. Every challenge, every loss, every hardship strengthens us. We learn, adapt, and endure. That is how we survive, and that is why I will not bow to fear or force. The queen's expression softened slightly, but her eyes remained sharp. You are brave, human, perhaps too brave, but bravery alone does not make one wise. Many have failed because their courage exceeded their judgment. Tell me, would you risk your life to save strangers, even if it meant losing your mission? Alara considered the question. Yes, she replied without hesitation. A life is more valuable than a mission. Strategy matters, but compassion defines our choices. Without it, strength is meaningless. Lysara regarded her quietly, and for a moment the palace terrace was silent except for the faint hum of the glowing plants. The queen had expected defiance, but she had not expected wisdom, courage, and empathy wrapped together so completely. She realized that this human soldier, despite being physically weaker and from a smaller species, possessed qualities that even the strongest Zithurian might envy. Perhaps I misjudged your kind, Lysara admitted. You speak of balance, courage, and reason. These are virtues that many of my people lack, and yet your ideals clash with the realities of power. You must learn that in some circumstances, survival demands choices that seem cruel. Alara met her gaze evenly. I understand that, and I will make difficult decisions when I must. But I will not abandon what is right, even when the choice is hard. True strength is knowing what is worth defending and having the courage to act for it. The queen's lips pressed into a thin line. For centuries, she had ruled Zithara with absolute authority. She had never encountered a being who could speak with both conviction and clarity, challenging the foundations of Zithurian obedience. And yet, she could not deny the logic and truth in Alara's words. You are remarkable, Captain, Lysara said finally. Your courage is unquestionable, your mind impressive, and your heart, perhaps the greatest strength of all. Alara's chest rose slightly with pride, though she kept her posture calm. Thank you, Queen Lysara. I do not seek praise, I only seek understanding and peace. If we can learn from each other, perhaps our species can thrive together. The queen studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps, but understanding is tested in more than words. Soon your resolve will be challenged not just by thought and strength, but by circumstance. The galaxy will test your beliefs, your courage, and your spirit. I hope you are ready. Alara nodded. She had faced impossible trials, yet she felt prepared. Her mission had always been to represent humanity with courage, intelligence, and honor. She would not falter, even in the face of adversity. The city below them shimmered in the fading light. The streets were quiet now, the citizens watching from a distance, their glowing eyes reflecting both curiosity and cautious respect. Alara realized that the influence of her choices, her defiance, and her courage would ripple far beyond the palace terrace. Even small actions, she thought, could inspire change. "Tell me," Lysara said, breaking the silence, "how do you carry the weight of responsibility without yielding to fear?" Alara smiled faintly. "By remembering that fear is a choice, not a command. We may feel it, but we do not have to obey it. Courage is standing firm even when the world expects you to fall. That is what humans do." The queen's gaze softened further. "Your people may be small, but their spirit is mighty. I see now why you stood before me without kneeling. It is not defiance for defiance's sake. It is strength, courage, and integrity. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated humanity." Alara felt a rare sense of connection with the queen. For centuries, Zithurians had ruled through authority and fear, yet here was a moment of mutual recognition, a shared understanding of strength beyond mere power. She knew this bond would not be easy to maintain, and that challenges still awaited, but it was a beginning. "Captain Vance," Lysara said, her tone softening into something almost like respect, "you have shown me that courage, wisdom, and honor are not confined to size or species. Perhaps in time you may teach my people as much as you have learned from this world." Alara bowed slightly, not in submission but as a gesture of mutual respect. "That is all I hope for Queen Lysara, that we can learn from each other and grow stronger together." For the first time, the terrace felt less like a place of judgment and more like a meeting of equals. Alara understood that the next challenges would test not only her skills and courage, but also her ability to inspire trust and cooperation. She had faced the queen's trials of mind and strength, and now she had faced the trial of ideals. Lysara turned, her silhouette outlined by the glowing city behind her. "Rest now, human. The next chapter of your journey will begin soon, and when it does, you will see whether your courage can withstand not just tests, but the harsh realities of the galaxy." Alara watched the queen move gracefully toward the palace halls, her mind racing with anticipation. She had proven herself in thought, strategy, and courage, but the challenges ahead would demand even more: her adaptability, diplomacy, and moral strength. She knew the road would not be easy, yet she also knew she would face it with the unyielding spirit that defined humanity. And so, Captain Alara Vance stood on the terrace of Zithra, gazing at the glowing city below, ready to face the next trials. The clash of ideals had begun, and it would shape not only her fate, but the fate of the worlds around her. The calm of Zithra's crystalline city was suddenly shattered. A deep, resonating hum rolled across the skies, vibrating through the crystal spires. Citizens paused, their glowing eyes widening in alarm. Captain Alara Vance, standing on the palace terrace, felt the air shift, carrying a sense of imminent danger. She instinctively reached for her sidearm, though she knew this was bigger than a single battle. From the horizon, massive ships appeared, dark and angular against the twin suns. They moved with precision, clearly coordinated, and emitted a low-energy pulse that interfered with the city's defenses. The invaders had come with one goal: conquest. The sudden arrival of a hostile alien fleet was unlike anything the Zithurians had faced in centuries. Queen Lysara appeared at Alara's side, her eyes sharp and calculating. "These are the Carton," she said, her voice tight. "A species bent on domination. They will not negotiate. They will not surrender. Zithra must fall if we cannot stop them." Alara studied the fleet, analyzing the patterns of movement. The Carton ships were heavily armored and heavily armed, far beyond anything humanity had faced before. Yet she did not panic. Humans had survived worse odds through strategy, ingenuity, and adaptability. She knew that fear could not guide her, only action and quick thinking could save lives. "We need a defense plan," Alara said. "Zithra's forces are strong, but they fight in patterns. If we combine your technology with human tactics, we can create traps and counterattacks that will give us a chance." Lysara regarded her silently for a moment, then nodded. "You will lead the strategy, Captain. If we fail, Zithra falls, the choice is yours." Alara felt the weight of responsibility settle over her, heavier than any she had carried before. But she also felt clarity. She had faced impossible challenges before, and this was no different in principle. It was simply on a larger scale. Strategy, coordination, and courage would decide the outcome. She moved to the war room, a vast chamber filled with holographic projections of the city, surrounding terrain, and the approaching fleet. The Zithurian generals gathered, their glowing eyes studying her carefully. They had never taken orders from a human before, and many were skeptical, yet the urgency of the threat left no room for hesitation. "Listen carefully," Alara began. Her voice was steady, commanding attention without arrogance. "The Khartan are fast, precise, and heavily armed. A direct assault will fail. We need to divide their forces, use the city's defenses, and strike where they least expect. We will fight not just with power, but with strategy, ingenuity, and coordination." The generals exchanged glances, some skeptical, others curious. Lysara stood beside Alara, her posture rigid but her eyes thoughtful. "We will follow your plan," the queen said. "But know this, failure is not an option. Zithra cannot fall." Alara nodded, grateful for the trust but aware of the stakes. She studied the city's energy grids, defensive turrets, and the layout of the landing zones. She assigned squads to choke points, created layers of decoys to mislead the invaders, and coordinated aerial patrols with rapid response units. Her instructions were clear, precise, and adaptable. The first wave of Khartan ships descended. Energy pulses lit the sky as defensive turrets opened fire. Explosions rocked the city, sending shards of crystal and debris scattering. Alara remained calm, issuing orders to redirect forces, reposition squads, and exploit openings in the enemy's formation. The Khartan had expected a traditional response, strict, predictable, and direct. Instead, they faced a coordinated network of human and Zithurian forces, moving unpredictably, striking from unexpected angles, and using traps to their advantage. Each success boosted the morale of the Zithurian troops, who began to see the human captain not as an outsider, but as a leader. During the battle, Alara moved from command point to command point, her mind calculating, her eyes sharp. She dodged energy blasts, directed reinforcements, and personally coordinated critical strikes that turned the tide at key moments. Her calm under pressure inspired the Zithurians. They fought not just because of duty, but because of trust in her judgment, her courage, and her resolve. At one critical moment, a massive Khartan warship broke through the city's outer defenses, heading directly for the palace. Alara quickly devised a plan. She coordinated a flanking maneuver, combining Zithurian anti-ship energy cannons with rapid human boarding units. The operation was risky, but she knew it was their best chance. With flawless timing, the joint strike hit. Energy beams lanced through the Khartan ship, and boarding teams disabled its engines. The warship crashed just outside the city walls, its power extinguished. A cheer rose from the defenders, though the battle was far from over. Queen Lysara watched the human captain with a mixture of awe and surprise. Alara's leadership had turned what could have been a disaster into a fighting chance. For the first time in generations, the queen saw the value of collaboration beyond Zithurian tradition. Strength, when combined with insight and courage, could achieve far more than power alone. Alara moved to the palace terrace to coordinate the next phase of defense. The Khartan were relentless, but she anticipated their patterns. She used misdirection, energy barriers, and carefully timed strikes to slow their advance. Each maneuver bought precious time for the citizens to evacuate and for the city's defenders to regroup. As the battle raged, Alara encountered a squad of Zithurian soldiers trapped by a Khartan strike team. Without hesitation, she led a small counterattack, using agility, quick thinking, and precise strikes to rescue them. Her actions inspired the soldiers, showing that courage and leadership were not defined by species, but by heart and determination. Hours passed in the chaos of battle. The sky above Zithra was filled with fire, smoke, and the crackle of energy. Yet the city endured, its crystalline structures withstanding assaults that would have destroyed lesser civilizations. Every decision Alara made was calculated, every move designed to preserve life while striking decisively at the enemy. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Khartan fleet began to retreat. Their losses were heavy, and the coordinated resistance of human and Zithurian forces had proven overwhelming. Alara allowed herself a moment to breathe, though she knew the threat might return. Queen Lysara approached, her expression unreadable. She placed a hand on the railing beside Alara, looking out over the city and the defeated fleet. "You have done what few could have imagined, Captain," she said softly. "Zithra would have fallen without your guidance. Your courage, your judgment, and your resolve, they have saved us all." Alara shook her head slightly. "I did not act alone, Queen Lysara. Your people fought bravely. They trusted me, and together we defended the city. Strength is meaningless without unity." Lysara nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Perhaps I misjudged humanity. You have shown that bravery, wisdom, and determination can achieve what raw power alone cannot. Perhaps this is the future of our alliance, one built on respect and collaboration, rather than fear and dominance." Alara looked at the glowing city, the citizens emerging from their shelters, and the battered but still standing defenses. She felt a deep sense of pride, not for herself, but for what could be achieved when courage and wisdom worked together. Humans could stand strong in alien worlds, and Zithurians could learn that collaboration often outweighed control. "Captain," Lysara said, her tone softer now, "the trials you faced in my arenas were difficult, but this was far greater. You have proven the human spirit is capable of more than I imagined." Alara smiled faintly. "And you have shown that even the proudest of queens can see beyond tradition. Together, we can face whatever the galaxy throws at us." The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting a golden-purple glow across the crystalline city. The battle had ended, but its lessons endured. Alara knew that future conflicts would test them further, but she also knew that she had earned the trust of a queen and the respect of an alien people. The Carton fleet had been repelled, yet the memory of their attack would linger. Alara understood that survival required constant vigilance, courage, and intelligence. But she also understood that victory was possible when determination, strategy, and unity guided every action. As night fell over Zithra, Alara stood beside Queen Lysara, looking out over the city that had survived against overwhelming odds. The palace glowed softly in the dark, a symbol of resilience and hope. The trials were not yet over, more challenges awaited, but for the first time both human and alien knew they could face them together. Captain Alara Vance had not knelt to the Queen. She had not yielded to fear. She had fought, led, and inspired. And in doing so, she had shown the true strength of humanity. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and wonder alike, but Alara was ready. Whatever came next, she would face it with courage, intelligence, and the unbreakable human spirit. The battle over Zithra had ended, but the city was far from quiet. Crystal shards from the Carton assault sparkled in the fading light of the twin suns, and the air still hummed faintly with residual energy. Captain Alara Vance stood on the palace terrace, surveying the scene. The Zithurian citizens moved cautiously through the streets, repairing defenses, restoring energy grids, and comforting the wounded. Queen Lysara joined her, her armor reflecting the glow of the city below. She had been silent for a long moment, and Alara sensed that the Queen's mind was busy, weighing not only the recent battle but the human soldier who had helped secure victory. "Alara," Lysara said at last, her voice measured, "you have proven yourself in ways I did not expect. Not just in the arenas or the trials, but here in the heat of battle. You led my people against overwhelming odds, guided them, and inspired them. That is rare among any species, even among the Zithurians." Alara shook her head slightly. "I did not do it alone. Your warriors fought bravely, they trusted the plan, and they fought with courage. I only helped coordinate." The Queen's eyes softened, yet her gaze remained firm. "Trust is not given lightly. Your actions earned it, not just from my people, but from me. That is what respect looks like, earned through deeds, courage, and wisdom. You did not kneel, and yet you stand as one of the most honorable leaders I have ever encountered." Alara felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of relief and pride. She had come to Zithra expecting judgment, perhaps hostility, certainly challenges, but she had not expected to earn the respect of the Queen herself. She knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but this acknowledgement was a milestone, a validation of the values she had carried across the stars. The Queen motioned toward the city below. "The Carton have retreated, but this will not be the last threat we face. Our worlds are in constant motion, alliances fragile, dangers always present. The strength you have shown here must now become a bridge between our peoples. Humans and Zithurians may yet stand together against the challenges of the galaxy." Alara nodded. "I understand, Queen Lysara, and I am ready to work toward that future. My people seek friendship and cooperation, not conquest, but we are strong, and we will defend what is right together. Lysara studied her in silence, then stepped closer. You have taught me something, Captain. Even the proudest, most disciplined people can learn from others. Strength is not just in power or obedience. It is in courage, in adaptability, in the will to act wisely and justly. Perhaps this is the way forward for Zithra as well. Alara's eyes swept over the glowing city, the citizens emerging from their shelters, helping one another. The once distant and rigid culture of Zithra was beginning to show signs of change, inspired in part by the human soldier who refused to bow. Captain Vance, Lysara said, her tone firm but respectful, I would like to offer you a place in my council as an advisor and as an ally. Not as a subject, not as one who kneels, but as someone whose wisdom and courage are valued equally with mine. Alara felt a surge of emotion but maintained her composure. Accepting this role would be an honor, yet it also carried immense responsibility. She had come to Zithra as a soldier, but now she was being offered a chance to shape the future of an entire civilization. I accept Queen Lysara, she said finally, her voice steady. Not for myself, but for humanity and for the promise of cooperation between our worlds. We will learn from each other and grow stronger together. The Queen inclined her head, a gesture of mutual respect. Then let this be the beginning of a new era, Captain. One built not on fear or domination, but on understanding, courage, and unity. Below them, the citizens of Zithra moved with purpose, repairing homes, restoring energy channels, and helping one another recover from the battle. Alara realized that the influence of courage and determination extended far beyond leadership. It inspired action, fostered hope, and created bonds that could withstand future trials. Over the following days, Alara worked alongside Lysara and the Council, helping to rebuild Zithra's defenses while also advising on interstellar diplomacy. She shared insights from human strategy and ethics, teaching the Zithurians to combine their technological might with adaptability and foresight. The Queen, in turn, shared the wisdom of her civilization, lessons learned over millennia of rule and conflict. Together, they began to reshape the culture of Zithra. The citizenry, once accustomed to strict hierarchy and unquestioning obedience, began to embrace the value of collaboration, dialogue, and courage beyond authority. Small changes at first, open discussions in council chambers, citizen participation in decisions, but they were the beginnings of a profound shift. One evening, as the twin suns set in brilliant hues of purple and gold, Alara and Lysara walked along the terrace. The city shimmered below them, peaceful and alive. You have done more than survive the trials, Lysara said. You have changed hearts, you have shown my people, and perhaps even me, that strength is not just in power, but in courage, wisdom, and integrity. Alara smiled faintly. And you have shown me that even the most proud and disciplined civilizations can learn and grow. Respect is earned, not demanded, and the galaxy is better for it. The Queen paused, her gaze fixed on the horizon. I expected you to kneel, human. I expected obedience. Instead, you taught me a lesson in courage, leadership, and the power of choice. That is rare among any species, and it is why I respect you. Alara felt the weight of those words. She had come to an alien world, expecting challenges, danger, and perhaps hostility. She had faced trials that tested every skill she possessed, led a civilization through battle, and now stood recognized not as a subordinate, but as an equal. The human spirit, resilient, courageous, and guided by principles, had triumphed in a place where submission was the norm. In the weeks that followed, the bond between humanity and Zithra strengthened. Trade agreements were established, joint defense plans were devised, and cultural exchanges began. Humans learned the secrets of Zithurian technology, while Zithurians began to understand the value of human adaptability and courage. Conflicts that once might have escalated into war were now approached with dialogue and strategy, inspired by the example set by Alara. Alara herself became a symbol, not just of human courage, but of the potential for unity across worlds. Zithurians spoke of the human who stood tall, refused to kneel, and yet acted with honor, intelligence, and compassion. The story of the battle, the trials, and the courage displayed by a single human spread throughout the city, inspiring countless others to stand strong, think wisely, and act courageously. One evening, as the city celebrated its recovery with soft, luminescent displays, Alara and Lysara stood together on the palace terrace. "Captain Vance," Lysara said, her voice quiet but full of meaning, "you have shown me and my people what true courage looks like. You have earned respect not through fear but through deeds. That is the legacy you leave behind." Alara looked out over the city, the citizens moving beneath the glowing towers, helping each other rebuild and celebrate life. "And that legacy," she said, "belongs to all who stand for what is right. Humanity is proud to walk beside Zithra not as a subject, but as an ally. Together we will face the galaxy stronger and wiser than before." The Queen nodded. "Indeed, let this be a beginning, Captain. A future where strength is measured not by who dominates, but by who acts with courage, wisdom, and honor." As night fell, the twin moons rose over Zithra, casting silver light over the crystalline spires. The city was safe, its people inspired, and the alliance between humans and Zithurians forged not by fear, but by trust, respect, and courage. Captain Alara Vance stood tall, knowing that the journey had not been easy. She had faced impossible trials, alien armies, and the weight of expectation. Yet she had prevailed. She had shown that humans could stand in the face of overwhelming odds, not as subjects, but as equals, guided by principles that transcended species and worlds. And as she gazed at the horizon, she knew the galaxy was vast and full of challenges. But humanity, united with allies like Zithra, would meet them with courage, wisdom, and unyielding spirit. The stubborn queen had expected submission. She had found something far more powerful, a human who stood tall, fought wisely, and inspired unity. In that moment, across the glowing city, the legacy of courage, honor, and respect was sealed, and the galaxy would remember it.